welcome everybody to the June 5th Town of Shelburne Development Review Board meeting. And would like to remind everybody that there is, I think, a clipboard circulating now for folks to sign in, so would you please sign in? And our first agenda item is public comment. Does anybody have anything they would like to bring forth to the board that is not currently on the agenda? Okay, if not, we will move to approval of the minutes.
I would make a motion to approve the minutes from May 15th, 2019.
I'd second the motion.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay, so approved. Okay, our first agenda item, I believe, is continued. Is that correct, Ravi? That's
that is
sub
for sub
1903. Is that correct?
To your determination whether to continue it to the requested date or not.
Yep. Okay.
If you'd like to, then you can.
I would make a motion to continue SUB 1903 to our June 19th, 2019 meeting.
Second.
His honor.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, so approved. And before I move on to other agenda items, I'd like to ask any of the board members if they believe they have any conflict with any of the agenda items. None? I'd also then like to ask the audience, is there anybody in the audience that believes anybody on the board may have conflict of interest?
Actually, from last time, I know Mr. and Mrs. Meunier. My
Yep.
son worked with them on building the food shed. So
Okay.
it was
Do
an
you
Eagle
think that will
No.
influence?
They don't have a problem. Nope.
Okay. All right, let's continue. The next item on the application is CU 0505R5 and SP 0801R3. Application by Fiddlehead Brewing Company LLC for conditional use and site plan review to convert a portion of the existing enclosed light manufacturing use into a restaurant use. Property is at 6305 Shelburne Road, and it's located in the Commerce and Industry South District and Stormwater Overlay District. Ravi, would you like to comment?
Sure. So a number of items have been added to the record since packets were distributed on Thursday. As you can see, one of the items is a request for a 30% reduction in parking for the 6305 Shelburne Road location, which is a subject property. Another one is correspondence between the applicant and staff regarding the staff memo that was provided to you for the May 15th, 2019 DRB meeting. In addition to that, lease agreements for the usage of parking off-site and also on-site. Firstly, on-site for 5 parking spaces at 6305 Shelburne Road. The applicant has been approved for 6 spaces in a previous approval in 2014. So there's no, for planning and zoning records, there's no change in the approval for that. In addition, there is a lease agreement between the applicant and Shelburne Green LLC, located at Graham Way, to use 12 parking spaces for the uses at 6305 Shelburne Road. In addition to this, another lease agreement has been provided by the applicant for the usage of, I want to say 6 parking spaces for also between Shelburne Green and the applicant for usage of 6 parking spaces at Sage Court. In addition to the lease agreements, another item that has been provided separately to you is a permit issued by Vermont Agency of Transportation, which is in line with 24 VSA 4416B, that for any work in a state right-of-way, state highway, that a that a site plan must be reviewed by the Vermont Agency of Transportation, and they have issued a permit to the applicant regarding this. So that has been provided to you as well. So with all the new information in mind, there are some notes that staff would like to make regarding the staff report. One thing to note is that with the site plan review regarding 24 VSA 4416, that this permit has been issued, and that staff believes that the Vermont Agency of Transportation can take over jurisdiction of this, and no condition is necessary on your part to make sure that the signage needs to be installed. With off-site parking, there are a number of considerations that should be made that were included in the staff report, such as paths connecting the subject property to the off-site parking locations on Graham Way and Sage Court, which may facilitate pedestrian access between the parking area and the subject property. One other thing to keep in mind as well that was not mentioned is that with on-site parking and off-site parking, and with all the requests for waivers, so there is already a 25% waiver for the existing restaurant use on the property for Felino's Pizza. On top of this 25% waiver, the applicant is requesting a 30% waiver. So the staff recommends that the board should keep in mind the existing demand on the site and the amount of parking that would be on site for all the uses before approvals or before any action is made. As of now, it would be 25 spaces for the existing restaurant use, Felino's Pizza, and 24 spaces for the proposed restaurant use. Additionally, on page 7 regarding parking as well, staff would like to correct that the applicant has now requested a full waiver of 30%, and is now proposing 24 spaces instead of 18 as suggested. Other than that, staff will defer to the applicant.
Can I ask a process question and
Yes.
then a substantive question of you before we go further?
Sure.
Firstly, as the application stands right now, net of all of the additional material that you've just so clearly summarized, are there any outstanding pieces of information or approval that are required for the board to consider the application on the merits? Is the record at this point subject to the board's ability to say, no, it was filed too late, we want it for the next meeting? Subject to that, is the record now complete from staff's perspective?
Yeah, from staff's perspective, the application is complete, and the record is complete as of now. One thing that was pending for the May 15th meeting was review and recommendations from the Historic Preservation and Design Review Commission, and that has been completed.
Okay.
So at this point, staff considers the application complete.
And the other question I have is this, because of their late submission, I didn't get a chance to review them in detail, but looking at the lease agreements that pertain to the parking spaces, they have terms and conditions that allow termination by one or both parties depending on the circumstances. Does the staff have a view as to whether or not the board should make clear that any approval is conditioned on the continued availability of the parking spaces without regard to the terms of the term of the lease?
So under section 1960 for offsite parking, for lease agreements for offsite parking, the lease agreements must be for a period of at least 5 years. Those documents have been provided to staff. So additional consideration on your part could be conditioned into it. For our part, in terms of the regulations, we find that the lease agreement is provided for a period of 5 years to be sufficient.
So under the regulations, if it's a 5-year lease, the lease pursuant to its terms expires, and there's no successor lease or renewal, resulting in the loss of those parking spaces. The staff's view is that that nevertheless complies with the regulations because the lease is for 5 years.
So that's getting more complicated.
I'm happy to talk to you about that if you're interested.
Well, then let him
Yeah.
answer the question, and then we can have everybody else.
Right. And so with something, at the present point, with the lease agreement as put forth in 1960 with a 5-year lease agreement, it's our understanding that that is for a period of 5 years, that there is so much parking, that if there is a reduction in the amount of parking, that would imply that the use is not in compliance with the regulations, and that additional approval may be necessary, or an action must be taken on by staff to inform the property owner of this, or even something more severe in the form of a general warning letter, notice of violation, and et cetera. So it's our understanding that action must be necessary on our part should there be a non-renewal or a discontinuance in the usage of parking, which would require the property owner to come back to you for further approval if necessary.
Good. Okay, anybody from the applicant that would like to testify?
Happy to talk. if you wanna
Sure.
listen.
Okay.
Great, my name is Matt Cohen, I'm the owner of Fiddlehead. So,
Yes.
I'm
We need
swearing,
to,
yeah. Okay.
Yeah, I'm looking for the words here. Here we go. Do you swear, affirm that the evidence that you give in the cause under consideration shall be the whole truth and nothing but the truth under the pains and penalties of perjury?
I do.
Okay, thanks.
Great. So again, my name is Matt Cohen, I'm the owner of Fiddlehead. We are looking to make a small change in our tasting room. We've now increased, you can come there and have pizza, you can have a pint of beer. What we have noticed from doing this now, we've been operating this way for 3 months, is that we are not seeing a tremendous we're seeing about 5% more traffic year over year. What we are seeing is a shift in the way that the space is being used. So in the past, everyone would come to our side, they would buy beer to go, and then they would go next door to Felino's, where they had limited seating, and they would struggle to find a place to sit. What we have noticed is that people are now sitting on our side as opposed to sitting on the Felino side, but that overall we're looking at about 5% more increase to the use of the space. So it hasn't been very significant, and with the addition of having the parking behind, we've never really run into a situation where people can't find a place to park, and during our high traffic hours, we have employed a parking attendant that is always on site to assist people parking and to alert them to the fact that there's additional parking out back. Okay,
Okay,
questions?
questions from the board?
So help me with the overall math. There's already a 25% waiver of parking in place.
Yes.
And using the same base of 100%, we're being asked to waive another 30, or we're just asking being asked to change the 25 to 30?
So this would be splitting the uses. So there would be a 25% waiver for the existing use that's in place, and then a 30% waiver for the proposed use. So each use would have a waiver.
Can you give me some idea what the math looks like on what the parking should be versus what is being requested?
Right. So the proposed use, the parking should be 27 spaces. It would be 24 spaces for the amount of seating that's involved, and 3 spaces for the existing manufacturing use that's already ongoing. Plus it would be, I believe, 28, I want to say 28 or 29 spaces that is stipulated for the existing Felino's Pizza restaurant use.
So in theory, it
So-
should be 55 total between the two?
Yes.
And how many,
It's currently 24 and 25.
25?
So it'd be 24 proposed and 25 current. So in the end, it would end up
49.
49, yes.
So just in like, 'cause I'm still having a little problem with the numbers, maybe in like reality terms, I know that when I go there, it's always a really tough thing to find parking spots. So with this proposal, what's changed that's gonna make it better parking for
There's
everybody?
additional parking behind. So we currently lease 12,000 square feet in one building in Shelburne Green. We lease another for 2,000 plus square feet where we get parking that's associated with that. And we're entering into a contract next week to listen to an additional 6,000 square feet. So there's plenty of parking out back.
And there'll be signage there.
There'll be signage, and we have parking attendants on site that are directing people to the back. There's over 300 spots that are located in Shelburne Green that are associated with Shelburne Green. In Shelburne Green, the majority of the busy time is 8 to 5. So on the weekends, when we're busy, they're not. So the parking is there, and we've never had an issue with overflow parking.
Does the subdivision of the property play into that at all, Robbie?
Of Shelburne Green?
Yeah.
No. So in this lease agreement, it appears as though they are respecting Gramway and Sage Court as separate entities. So the parking for Shelburne Green North Phase 1 has 6 spaces, and then Shelburne Green South, if I'm not mistaken, would be 12 spaces. So idealistically, the current subdivision proposal by Shelburne Green wouldn't play into this. However, one thing that staff would recommend to Shelburne Green when they do come back for subdivision approvals is that their parking tables be modified to include the off-site parking for Fiddlehead Brewing Company.
Is there any restriction if more than, is that 18 total spaces or 15? The spaces in Shelburne Green, it was 6 and 12?
Yeah, there's no restriction for the amount of off-site parking.
Right, okay.
Yeah, that's uncapped.
Okay.
Are you proposing some type of connectivity between the lower property and the parking lot?
Absolutely.
There is, okay,
A set of stairs.
okay. Any additional lighting or anything?
With lights, yeah.
Okay. So if that's the case, if they're adding lighting, we have to make sure that that's compliant with the lighting ordinance, is that correct? Or-
It depends on how much lighting the applicant is proposing. If it's 4 or more high-intensity lighting, so greater than 1750 lumens, that would require site plan review from you. If it's less than that, then that can be administratively approved.
Okay.
Should, from the staff's position, should the stairs and lighting be a condition of approval if authorized?
Staff believes that that can be something that can be conditioned under section 1913 regarding sidewalks, walkways, pedestrians, bicycle paths as a possible condition of approval. So this is something that is within your ability to condition in.
In your report, you had given one option for decision to continue because the applicant hadn't provided a parking plan. Have the updates received, and I haven't had a chance to look at those. Does that change that for you?
Yes, that does. At the time that the staff report was given to you, they did not fulfill the parking requirements as stipulated under section 1960. Staff had not received a parking waiver request at that time. With the new information provided in between Thursday and today, those items have been fulfilled.
Any other questions from the board? Any public comments? Yes, sir.
Maybe a recommendation, I've been going since.
Yep,
you-
please,
Use the microphone,
stand up at the
sir.
mic, and
Stand up at the mic and be sworn in.
I'll need to swear you in again.
Okay. Hi, my name's Perry Reinhardt.
Okay, great. Do you swear and affirm that the evidence you give in the cause under consideration shall be the whole truth and nothing but the truth under the pains and penalties of perjury?
I do.
Okay?
Only one minor recommendation I might have, I've been there a few times now, I love the expansion, I love the new bar area. The parking space that's right directly in front of the stairs, I'm wondering if it might be advantageous to maybe block that out so that it allows pedestrians to walk through there freely without having to get through cars right at the head of the stairs there. But that's the only thing I might recommend. Yeah.
Thank you.
Otherwise, I really love it. You've
Great,
done a
thank you.
job.
Yeah, unfortunately, I'll have to talk to my
Yeah,
landlord,
yeah,
but yes.
right, okay.
I don't have that power.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, any further comments? Okay, well, I guess I would move to finalize the record and close the hearing and motion to authorize.
Yeah, I would suggest that a fourth condition be added to the draft motion to authorize, and that is that the stairs and lighting as discussed in the hearing be added.
I second that.
Comments, Mark?
Oh, I'm just wondering about this potential notice of the lease termination or expiration or non-renewal. I'd like to see a condition in there that, that the town be notified if there's a termination, expiration, or non-renewal of the lease after the 5-year period.
I would support.
I'm about to undergo a 15-year lease on the property. I'm not going anywhere. We've got millions and millions and millions of dollars invested into this space.
Well, then it won't be a.
Shouldn't be a problem then.
Be a problem.
Okay.
Yep.
So
Okay.
I would support that addition, Mark.
Any
Concur.
kind of notice prior to the end of the contract?
At expiration or termination of any lease providing for parking spaces or access to parking spaces. So that would be condition 5, in addition to the 3 that appears in the staff draft. 4 being the stairs and lights, the first 3 being the material staff has already submitted.
So I would second that motion with those 5 conditions.
All in favor?
Aye.
So approved. Thank you. Okay, next agenda item
Excuse me.
is application sub 1906, application by Richard and Marguerite Minier for a sketch plan review for proposed 2-lot residential plan unit development. Property at 136 Southview Drive is located in the rural district. Ravi, you're ready for comment.
So,
was fun.
with this project, the board previously saw this on May 15th as a pre-application conference. With a full-fledged application, staff recommends that a site plan review application is provided with their preliminary plan review application. That's one thing. To assist with the board's review of this application, staff has provided examples of conservation subdivision design and clustering, because the intent of PUD design in the rural district is to cluster, is to focus more on preserving as much open space as possible, putting house sites closer to the road, and that's something that that the board can discuss with the applicant if they find some incongruities with design. With also design as well, staff recommends that the applicant provides the location of a possible house site on proposed Lot 2 in their preliminary plan application to gauge the potential impact of the development and to gauge how much open space is being allocated. With that as well, an open space plan and details on the mechanism for protecting the open space with their preliminary plan application is recommended by us. As this is a PUD proposal, we recommend that the board classifies this as a major subdivision. As with PUDs, especially PUDs in the rural district, the applicant has indicated that they will comply with all state permits prior to construction to ensure of compliance. Staff recommends a project review sheet being provided with a preliminary plan application. Otherwise, staff defers to the applicant at this point.
Okay. I've got a couple of questions. I'm just curious, why is this a PUD?
So this was a change in the bylaws that occurred in March, that all subdivisions in the rural district are PUDs, and all rural PUDs, residential PUDs must allocate 60% of of the subject property as open space.
Okay. And then,
Which in effect means it's a major,
Yes.
so I mean, another way of saying it, Robbie, it's really not a recommendation, it's what the bylaws require.
It's what the bylaw says.
okay. So by default, it is a major subdivision.
Yes, but that is a classification that you must make a determination on at the sketch
Okay.
plan phase.
Okay. Okay, good. Do we have anybody from the applicant that would like to stand up and testify? Dick? Okay,
My name is Richard Minion.
okay, and I'll swear you in. Do you swear that the evidence you give and the cause under consideration shall be the whole truth and nothing but the truth under the pains and penalties of perjury?
I do.
Okay. What's your story?
Story. It's pretty simple, I think, at this point. It's just a procedure that we're going through to subdivide our 10.3 acres into 2 lots, one with the existing home now, and that we would sell, and then to build a house on the other lot that is roughly 5.5 acres.
Okay. Good. Any questions from the board?
No.
Any questions from the audience, public? Okay,
Doug?
No, Seth, we're good.
we're good?
Okay.
Okay,
So I'll
Well-
make a motion to classify SUB 1906 as a major subdivision, to finalize, goes to the record of the hearing, and a motion to authorize to prepare the applicant to prepare a preliminary review plan and the other conditions listed in the staff recommendation.
I'll second.
all in favor? Aye. Okay, so approved.
We're gonna find out.
Okay, next agenda item is application sub 19-02, application by Civil Engineering Associates Incorporated on behalf of APC Properties LLC for preliminary plan review of a proposed 2-lot re-subdivision. Property is at 2800 Shelburne Road, is located in the mixed-use district and stormwater overlay district. Ravi, what do you have?
So, this is a preliminary plan application for a 2-lot subdivision to create a residential use on the lot that's being created with the existing retail use as is. One concern that staff did note is on page 8 with the lot design, that the lot that's being created to the south of the existing retail use is about twice the size of the minimum lots. It's about 3 times the size of the minimum lot size of a single-family dwelling in the mixed-use district. So, based on this, staff believes that further subdivision of that lot is possible. And with that in mind, design that a house site or design must consider the possibility of further subdivision. Staff would recommend a house site placed in the corner of a lot, so that way further subdivision is possible per the stipulated dimensions for the mixed-use district. Otherwise, at this point, staff will defer to the applicant.
Okay. Is there anybody from the applicant that would like to speak? Dave? Do you swear and affirm that the evidence you give in the cause under consideration shall be the whole truth and nothing but the truth under the pains and penalties of perjury?
I do.
Okay.
For the record, I'm Dave Marshall from Civil Engineering Associates. And up on the wall is the proposed subdivision property. Basically, it occupies this particular area. And in this particular case, the application seeks to subdivide off this particular area, just a little less than 1 acre, for residential use. And as Revi indicated, to allow the existing commercial uses to remain on the northern portion. In this particular case, utility services are currently designed to tie into existing water and sewer infrastructure located on the commercial lot. So we've avoided impacts on the associations, residential properties to the west with regard to the proposed creation of this particular residential lot. So I think in regards to the discussion of re-subdivision, future re-subdivision of that proposed lot, I think that's the primary discussion point here. I'm not sure if the applicant's real comfortable with the recommendation of staff as far as trying to site their house in the corner of the lot. I guess we're open for discussions with the board as far as that particular item is concerned. Usually when it comes to residential lots, it's, you either make your own bed and live with it, or you don't. So that's at least what the history has typically been with these areas, as far as at least layouts of proposed subdivisions where you have road systems that again also have required frontages and the like, sometimes setting up those roadways to allow for additional density can be set up as part of a master plan component. But pretty much here, everything, there we go. Pretty much these are existing lots that are fronting on Route 7, existing lots over on this particular side, and we're just looking for a little bit of thought and flexibility from the board in regards to that particular issue.
If they were just to plunk the house right in the middle of the lot, wouldn't that just basically be their issue that they would not be able to subdivide it?
That's our take on the situation, yes. Yeah, I mean, yeah, that's right. Obviously you like I indicated, you create your own bed. Either you facilitate future land value, or you basically say, no, this is going to be a residential lot where future development is going to be limited, unless, of course, you can always take down the building and redevelop. So that's also an option.
Any questions, comments from the board?
Is the proposal to actually put the house in the center?
At this point in time, I think we're still working on that as far as ultimately the layout. So I wish I could tell you one way or the other, but coming from sketch plan and trying to lay things out, we're still working on that. The good news is it easily fits within the 1 acre lot,
Right.
But nonetheless, the exact layout, I'm sorry, we don't have that just yet.
Okay. But you're, to summarize what you said slightly differently, you're confident that your clients understand, based on the assessment that you've shared with them about how this situation normally works, that their placement of the house may well have significant implications for the possibility of future subdivision, future re-subdivision.
I think that's a fair representation.
Any other comments from the board, questions?
Can I-
Any comments, questions from the public, please?
Hi, Kathleen Collette.
Okay, do you swear that the evidence you give in the cause under consideration shall be the whole truth and nothing but the truth under the pains and penalties of perjury?
I do.
Okay.
I can tell you the house is going in the middle.
Okay.
So no worries. We're not going to subdivide it further.
Yeah.
It's going in the middle.
Okay,
All right.
thank you.
I've been overruled.
Okay, any further comment from the public? Seeing none, any motions from the board?
I'd like to make a motion to finalize the record and close the hearing, and move the staff, direct the staff prepare a decision to authorizing CEA to, on behalf of APC Properties, to prepare a final plan review application SUB 1902, with the one recommendation that is listed that has, which is potential location of residential structures, and any proposed driveways must be included with any site plan submitted as part of final plan review.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you
Okay.
for your time.
Thank you. Okay. The next agenda item is application FBZ 19-01, CU 19-08, and SP 19-06. Application by David Schenk for conditional use and site plan review of a 63-unit group living use, basement parking, and waivers from Shelburne Road form-based overlay district regulations. Property at 3972 Shelburne Road is located in the mixed-use district, stormwater overlay district, and Shelburne Road form-based overlay district. Ravi, you could comment, please.
Yeah, so one thing to advise you is you may want to do a mass swearing. I'm not sure who is in appearance, but staff has received calls and concerns about this application. So there may be public in the audience that have some concerns to note for the board. With this application in general, this application in general is to construct 48 residential units for group living use, 15 units for household living uses under the form-based overlay district regulations. One item that was new to staff yesterday was that with the development of multi-family use, it requires subdivision review and approval, even under the form-based code. The form-based code doesn't explicitly state this, but the subdivision regulations do. And this is something that was unbeknownst to staff until yesterday morning, and we have informed the applicant of this as well procedurally. However, this should not impede the board's review of the application in any way. Much of the planning standards and standards in the subdivision regulations under Article 800, 810, and 900 overlap with the standards under Section 1900, and 1910. So much of the information would be the same if you were provided the regulations from the subdivision regulations. However, staff does recommend a continuance until, for any actions until the July 17th meeting, so the board can close the item in a combined manner for the subdivision application, the form-based application, the conditional use application, and the site plan application all in one hearing. And therefore, one decision would be issued for all four applications. Moving,
So just let me ask the 6,000-pound
sure.
gorilla in the room question procedurally. So
Sure.
if the board accedes to that request, does it make sense to have the factual record developed at this hearing and that hearing, or to have the entire thing done in a single hearing?
So that was something that was discussed with staff and the applicant. Staff doesn't really know how this application will be reviewed by the board and the public because there's a lot of materials in here. So this might require multiple hearings in order to parse through. And with that in mind, staff recommended that the creation of a factual log from the get-go and allow the application to proceed going forward. However, the board has the discretion to make a judgment call on this, but with something like this, with the materials in front of you, we believe it's best to open up the record and parse through the application. Some things to note regarding the application is staff has understood from the applicant that the 80 spaces for basement parking is reduced to 78. But before I move forward, I do need to clarify that with form-based code, the units are given by right. That is a permitted use, the amount of units for that lot. What the board would be reviewing is the existence of structured parking on the lot. That is a conditional use for all form-based applications. The surface parking spaces that are in excess of the stipulated parking is a conditional use that the board would have to review and approve. With that as well, the board would also review, would do a full thorough site plan review for an application like this because there are buildings that are greater than 2,000 square feet in terms of building footprint involved. On top of this, with conditional use review because of the structured parking, there's an additional conditional use criteria listed in the form-based code under section 1.7.5 and also on pages 6 and 7 of your staff report that you would regard along with the conditional use review criteria under section 1910.4 and 1910.4B. Lastly, the DRB has purview over the waivers that the applicant is requesting. The applicant is requesting 3 waivers, multiple buildings on 1 lot, deviation from building placement standards to reduce the required built-to zone by 10 feet, and deviation from building element standards to achieve compliance with ADA standards. So with that in mind, those are the 3 things that the board has purview over, which is structured parking, parking in excess of 14 spaces at an at-grade level, and the 3 waivers requested. Other than that, everything else listed in the application are by right under form-based code.
Riley, just quick, in terms of structured parking,
Yes.
what does our review consist of?
That is an excellent question. So with structured parking, you would be reviewing based on the conditional use criteria listed under section 1.7.5 to see if the structured parking is in compliance with the purpose of the regulating plan, the character district, the benefit of structured parking, whether the structured parking design allows for uses that are appropriate for its context and consistent with the town planning goals and objectives for the area, facilitates pedestrian vehicular access and infrastructure that are appropriately designed. It's high quality design, it's aesthetically pleasing, and it also mitigates negative impacts that are associated with the use. On top of that is the standard criteria for conditional use that it is not impacting the existing public facilities, not impacting traffic on nearby roadways, highways, not clashing with the character of the area in line with the comprehensive plan, and does not create an unreasonable burden on the town's ability to provide services.
Do we have specific criteria for those things that it has to meet?
In terms of.
Well, you said under 1.7.5, it has to meet,
Yeah.
eh,
This is
how
so.
tall, how wide, how deep, how thick? I mean, is there,
Right. Yeah. With basement parking, there is no dimensional requirements with specifically with basement parking because it is understood to be in the footprint or a little bit or in the footprint or outside, but even without the footprint, just underneath. So there's no specified dimensional requirements for basement parking specifically. For parking garages, there are specific requirements that the floor to area ratio has to be a certain amount. I'm going to parse this out and see if I can explain this properly. So for the amount of space that a parking lot would have, if you were to have a parking garage, it would have to be half the amount and stacked. But otherwise, in terms of basement parking specifically, there are no specific dimensional
but we're
requirements.
supposed to review that, right?
Yes and no.
Thank you. John? You're the lawyer, that's fine.
Do we have anybody from the applicant that would like to testify?
Yes.
Present? Okay.
You want to do a mass swearing?
The number of us that may testify.
Okay, anybody that may testify, please stand and we'll do a mass swearing in. Okay, do you swear that the evidence you give in the cause under consideration shall be the whole truth and nothing but the truth under the pains and penalties of perjury? Okay, thank you.
Good evening. My name is Paul O'Leary. I'm with O'Leary Burke Civil Associates. I'm the project civil engineer. Would you like a brief overview of just
Yeah, that would be
the
great.
whole project?
Sure.
I realize that some of it, as Ravi mentioned, is by right. But just to talk about the few waivers and stuff doesn't really do the whole project's justice. And I'm sure there's folks in the public that would like to see a little bit more of an overview than what we've given so far. So I would like to thank staff and thank Ravi for helping us through the form-based code. It's the first project we've done in Shelburne with the form-based code. We have done some in some other towns. It's been kind of back and forth. There's quite a bit to it, and there's quite a bit of conflicting errors in it, but thanks to the staff, we've had a few bumps in the road, but we've been able to work through it, and we think we're confident now that we have a project that fully does conform with the form-based code and will be a benefit to the town of Shelburne. So rather, if I could get you maybe to change to a different site plan other than the one cartoon, I'm going to give a brief overview, and then I'm going to let Steve Schenker, who's located here in Shelburne, the project architect, just talk about the building a little bit, and then we'll take questions. That'll work. So the project site is best known as the Yankee Doodle Motel, rather than the address 3972. It's owned by Gabriel Handy. I don't know the last time it actually operated as a motel. David? Long time ago. Long time ago. So it's 15 motel units, and there's actually a 16th unit that was a caretaker unit. At one point in time, it had an Act 250 application to about double the size and to have a restaurant and a few other things that never happened. But it is under Act 250 jurisdiction, so the project will require, the full vote of state reviews. So access to the project is off an existing private drive that comes in. There's easement agreements that allow the Yankee Doodle property to access that. It also accesses the commercial building to the north of that, and I believe there's a total of 17 residential units in the back that are also accessed off that drive. Lot size is 3.27 acres. It is in the Green Corridor District. Under that, we're allowed to build 63 residential units. So we are proposing 3 buildings, A, B, and C. A and C would each have 24 units. They would be elderly housing. Building B in the middle is 15 units, and that would be what we refer to as market housing. So that could be any age group, from 21-year-old, up through an 80-year-old, whoever desired to be there. We do have underground parking or basement parking, as Ravi referred to. Originally, we had a total of 80 spaces. We've now dropped 2 spaces out to use as a little additional storage and, to be honest, to avoid having to lease those spaces to the public if need be. Your regulations require us to have 78 spaces. And basically, because we have 80 spaces and we exceed your requirement, anything that exceeds it, we have to make available to the public within a radius of, I believe, 700 feet. And so rather than go through the hassle of having 2 spaces, we're just going to drop those 2 spaces out. In addition, we have 14 surface spaces, as you can see here in the center. The idea of the surface spaces are mostly for deliveries, visitors who come, if you're in one of the apartments or you're visiting someone in an elderly home, obviously you can come in and you can utilize those 14 spaces. Relatively compact in terms of the amount of impervious surface we have. We have the existing road. We're basically coming in the back with a 24-foot wide access road. Beginning in here, it drops down a ramp relatively steeply that comes into this first building. The ramp actually goes, so the underground parking goes all the way through to the last building. So this one-way in and out is the only access point to the underground parking. These spaces in between the building are actually open. So you basically drive out of one building, you have a little bit of light that you drive through, and then you drive into the next building. So with the current plan, we have 78 underground and we have 14 surface spaces. Now, it does require conditional use approval from the board because we exceed the base parking calculation of 68 units. And as Ravi mentioned, it also requires conditional use for the underground parking. All right. Project can be served by municipal water and sewer, basically come off Shelburne Road in the front and come into the building. We've met with the fire chief to talk about his needs in terms of fire access, circulation of the fire trucks. We're confident that the way it's laid out, that he can come in and service the buildings should there be a fire. We've had some additional talks about where some of the fire equipment or the fire apparatus might be located, and we've come to agreement with him on that aspect. Stormwater, we have 2 bioswales, a bioswale located in the center of this square here, and then a bioswale that's located along the frontage of Shelburne Road. The form-based code requires that we have a certain percentage of the property be open, not so much open space, but usable community space. And so we've identified 2 places, and that's shaded in green. We have this area in front, where we have a sidewalk that comes out the front of the building and goes out to Shelburne Road. And then we have the area in the back here that we're proposing for a community garden. So they'd be raised beds that the tenants could occupy. Obviously, we have a lot more green space that we haven't taken credit for. We have quite a bit of green space in the middle. We have these 2 large green spaces in front of the building. But basically, what's in green is sufficient to meet the form-based code requirement. So we just went with that and didn't try to stretch it and include every little piece that comes in. Relatively low traffic generator. The elderly housing only produces about 0.25 trips per unit. So basically we get about 12 trips out of that. We get a few more trips out of the market building. I think our total is 21 or 22 trips. I think the original hotel produced around 8 trips, so we're going from 8 to about 22, so a relatively low number. As I'm sure you're aware, your regulations require 75 new PM peak trips to trigger the need for a traffic study, although I'm sure the board has discretion to ask for one if they thought it was needed. So I'm going to let Steve Schenker just talk a little bit about the buildings, give you a quick one view of what they look like. They are 2-story buildings per the allowable code, and then we'll entertain any questions you might have.
Thank you.
Yeah, maybe to the landscape plan. I'm Steve Schenker. I'm working on I'm the architect for the project as well as doing the landscape design, and maybe we could just start with that. The planting plan. So in general, maybe just pull back a little bit to show Shelburne Road. In general, the front of the new buildings will be approximately where the front of the existing motel is. There's a low planted area adjacent to Shelburne Road, and then there's going to be a wide lawn area leading up to the buildings. We've got some flowering trees and a mix of evergreen trees in front of the buildings. And then we added new street trees along the private drive adjacent to the building there. As you come in, we've got a planted center courtyard area with some shade trees. And then along the, I guess it's the west property line adjacent to the residential area behind us, we've got a continuous 6-foot-high fence, some evergreen shrubs, and then a mix of evergreen trees and shade trees along that driveway. That, as Paul mentioned, the entrance to the parking is tucked in that upper left-hand corner. Just as far as the buildings, they will read as 3 distinct buildings, but they are linked as one below through the parking. And maybe we could switch to the elevations. So the top drawing is the view from Shelburne Road. We tried to provide an attractive facade on Shelburne Road as well as the private drive, and the building will, the siding will be a mix of clapboard and shingle. There's a series of large 2-story bays, and then we have sort of a rhythm of small bay windows at the first floor level. The porches that you see lead to the common areas within the building. We'll have divided light windows. The roofing is asphalt shingles. And that railing that you see between the 2 buildings is the railing for the edge of the lower below-grade parking, basement parking. That's a short summary.
We did provide some estimates for the landscaping. The estimated cost of the building and the project is $5.6 million. And the estimated cost of the landscaping plan, of just the plant materials and the cost to put it in, is $64,000. And that's included in your packet.
Okay. Any further comments? Questions from the board? Questions, comment from the public? You didn't, I was wondering if you did. You didn't. Okay, do you swear that the evidence you give on the cause, in the cause under consideration shall be the whole truth and nothing but the truth under pains and penalties of perjury?
I do.
Okay.
My name is Robert Bick. I'm one of the owners of the association that owns the right-of-way that's described in the project as the way to enter the new project, and I have some serious concerns from my perspective. The current right-of-way does not grant access as far into the property of the association as the applicant is currently suggesting that it does. And I'm very concerned about the amount of traffic that's going to be coming into that private association. There's currently no sidewalk on that private road. There's a school bus stop at the Route 7 intersection, so there are children coming and going early in the morning and late afternoon, oftentimes without parents. So I don't see any provision for addressing that. And I just want to make sure, in terms of my presence here, that I have expressed at least those concerns at this point in order to reserve any future rights that I may have in terms of the project.
Okay, thank Thank you.
Thank you.
I have a technical question. Do we get involved in the right-of-way access in any form?
So you could. So this has to do with site plan review under section 1900. That generally of course, to connect to a private road, the applicant road would need right-of-way access with any zoning permit for us to permit it in order to ensure sufficient access. This project proposal has been reviewed by the fire department. Those notes have been provided to you as a supplemental materials. It's in the packet on the last page that I provided to you earlier today. So access has been evaluated by the fire department regarding that. In terms of providing pedestrian access walkways, that is within site plan review under your purview. So under section 1900 subpoint 13, you could require pedestrian walkways, bikeways, any type of facility for pedestrian access. For any private road, the town encourages that the road is built to the public works specifications, either a type 1 or type 2 road. This road, staff believes, is not built up to the standards of a type 2 road, but upgrades could be made, and that is under your purview as well.
So are we doing site plan review? We aren't tonight.
Yes, you are. So you're doing site plan and conditional use review and waivers. The conditional use review is for the parking structure as well as the excess parking on the surface. Site plan review is required for projects of this size, and then the waiver review.
Okay.
We can provide the board with a copy of the easement. It's our belief that the easement extends the full length of the property.
Then a quick question, if it doesn't turn out that way, is there an adjustment that you can make to your site plan?
Yes, it would be quite a major adjustment.
Okay. Just, that's kind of a go, no-go then?
Correct.
Okay.
And we have had an initial conversation with Gail Lindemann, the Cedar Haven Home Owners Association, to discuss common maintenance of the road.
I can just speak to that quickly. So I'm David Shank, I'm the applicant. I have done other projects in Chittenden County, and I'm not new to that this might impact other people. So one thing that I do, and one thing that I did do here is that I did realize that there are neighbors in the rear that are residential that would be part of this project by association, being a neighbor. So before applying, I did reach out. Gail is here, and I shared with her. I found out that she was the chairman of the association. We are abutters of the association. We're not legally abutters of any specific person, but the intent of mine was to make sure I hit everybody. So I met with her, I believe, twice, and I did, prior to submitting to you, email her all the pretty much the core of the documents: lighting plan, landscape plan, site plan. I'll confess, I actually never got any response back formally, but I did make myself available. She had a question about some stuff, and I've answered it. But I want you to know that I did make an effort prior to submitting to you to at least involve other parties privy of this project. So. Thank you.
I am Gail Lindemann, and David did reach out to us. David did reach out to us.
You have to swear you in.
Oh, okay.
So you need to stand.
Dave, I would suggest if there are more people in the public, they do swear.
Is there anybody else that would like to speak or thinks they may?
Do you want me to comment? Sure.
Sure.
Can't hurt.
Can't hurt.
Well, it's free.
Okay, all right.
I better stand
Wow.
up on our side just to.
There we go. There we go. Now we got some participation here.
There we go.
All right. Do you all swear that the evidence you give and the cause under consideration shall be the whole truth and nothing but the truth under the pains and penalties of perjury? Okay, thank you.
So I am Gail Lindeman, and I have met with David on 2 occasions so far, and we do plan to meet with him again. We wanted to hear what your input was on this, but hopefully we will be able to come to some resolutions on some of these issues. I've met with the majority of the homeowners in our neighborhood. There still are a few homes that I have not met with, but the consensus of the concerns seem to fall under the categories of the impact of the traffic on our road. I know they're saying elderly housing, but I think it's only specified as 55 and plus, and it's not assisted living, so people do have to go in and out constantly, and many people at the age of 55 do work. So that is a real concern for us about the increased traffic on our road. Our road only has 17 homes right now, so if you add an additional 63, that's quite a large amount to add to our private road. The other issue is safety of our road, because since we are a private road, the school bus does not come down our road. They will not come down our road. So all of our children are picked up on the corner, and often parents, what they do, because they feel it's such an unsafe spot, sit in their cars along the road until the school bus comes. And if there's a lot of increased traffic, they're not going to be able to do that. So we're open to suggestions how we could resolve that issue, so that there is some accommodations for school children and their safety. The other issue that has come up is screening. The buffer that's provided is very close to the one cul-de-sac, and by doing this project, it pretty much clears all of the woods that we had as a buffer between us and Route 7. So we request, one of the things is to increase the fence size to an 8-foot fence rather than a 6-foot fence. And especially if you look at this map, on the left side, where the cul-de-sac is possibly to really increase the number of evergreens and larger trees. On the right side, it's more of a wooded area, so that's really not as important. But in the area where it's behind 3 homes specifically, if there was some more screening. And finally, the issue that I think that you can address is, overall, the one concern we have, and I haven't been able to get an answer from, I don't even think you were knowledgeable as to what it was, is there a rock ledge underneath for an underground parking garage, and is there going to be blasting again? We've lived around a lot of development, and we do live on a ledge of rock, and every time there's been development, our houses have really rocked for months and months and months. And we are concerned, if there's an underground parking garage, if there's going to be blasting that close to our homes and children right there. And the other thing is, and I wasn't able to reach out to you to find out the one question as to why all of the cars are put into that one side of your parking garage rather than having an access on the other side as well. And because that is where the houses are, and that is the closest to our development as far as putting all the traffic constantly going in and out right behind us.
Would you like me to respond to the board for some of the items? I'll try to kind of chronological order. One thing I mentioned to you, I reached out to the board, met with Gail, had a great meeting, and I did formalize kind of our approach to the project. And one thing that we did put in writing to them, an offer, was basically it would be our desire to reconstruct pretty much the portion of the private road that adjacent to our development. Now, we never got a response to that. I think, it's still on the table. I think, I can't speak for the association, but I think that would be in their best interest. And beyond the reconstruction of the road, we offered, we want to contribute toward the maintenance. I think I said to her many times, we're not looking for a free ride by any means. We want to be an asset to that road. So that could, that road, that conversation never went any farther. So, that road could include a sidewalk. Obviously, the application in front of you has to do with the land that we control. It is not the development of any other parcel. So I think in terms of pedestrian access, vehicle access with the road, I think those things could be addressed if the dialogue were to continue. So that, I'll leave that topic where that stood there. One of the topics was the buffer on the back. So I'm not sure how familiar you are with form-based code, but Ravi kind of hit it a couple times. A lot of things are by right. Form-based code is, despite the very good efforts of the design team in front of you, who I think have done a very good job, their scope is somewhat limited in what they can do because your regulations are very prescriptive, and that's the way form-based code is. Basically, you have already told us what you want in this spot. Height and widths and lot coverage and open area, and you can have this and you can't have that. And basically, we meet that. So that actually applies to the buffer. So we would want a buffer anyways, but long story short is section 1.6.3 basically outlines very specifically what the transitional buffer is. And we basically, we design to your standards. Now, no objections to, I'm not sure, I think we probably have a 6-foot fence proposed. The standards allow for 5 to 8 feet. We have 0 objections to increasing that to 8 feet. So, so I'll just kind of, this very quick chart here. Landscape buffer length, entire length of residential of property. You'll see that our buffer is the full width of the parcel, even though even in the community garden area we have no buildings. We're going the whole way. And they have like 3 things about planting material. Understory trees, you need to have 4 of them every 100 linear feet. Shrubs, minimum of 40 for every 100 feet. Shrub height, minimum of 3 feet. And if you read those really small pixelated comments in the top right-hand corner, basically that details all those requirements. There's also specifics about evergreens. And kind of on the fly, I'm not sure if it limits our ability of evergreen, but as long as we're allowed to, we have no objections to increasing the amount of evergreen versus deciduous vegetation. So I guess what I'm trying to say to you, as long as we can conform to the regulations, we're happy to make those adjustments.
And it's possible we could just shift some of the landscaping along the back to get a little more concentration back where the cul-de-sac is, and maybe a little less concentration along the wooded area. So same number of plantings, but a little different with the spacing. We could easily do that.
And before I forget, another comment that Gail made was just kind of a question to us in this forum was, why is all the vehicle traffic going where it is and whatnot? So another thing about the regulations do not allow front yard parking. So we're trying to, you're looking at the big plan, big picture here, trying to think about circulation, think about the fire truck, all those things. So we're not trying to create driveways to nowhere. So it's a flat site. We have underground parking. So how do you go from ground floor to basement? That's going to require a ramp on a flat site. So we don't have any existing topography to work with, to put the building kind of higher, have the parking come underneath. We've got a flat site to work with all this. So that, if you take all those things and in your experience of land planning, you kind of realize that, we're going to have this ramp going down 10 feet. If we were to put a ramp on building C, not sure how we would actually achieve that. We'd have this huge ramp going down, then we'd have to come back up to get to the ADA access that you see in the circulation. So basically all these kind of limitations of the site and how it's all going to work force this solution, which we actually think is pretty good because it puts it in the back corner, out of sight, out of mind. It's a ramp going downward. Once they're entering that, any headlights are going to be going down in there. So that's kind of a long-winded answer of why the circulation is the way it is.
Since I was sworn in, I'm going to pitch in comment as well. David and I did a project about 3 or 4 years ago of senior housing in a community. Oh, John Logan. And I happen to be a resident of Shelburne, have been for about 15 years. And it's important to me that I drive by every day on 7, that we do something the community's proud of. It's important to me, important to David. Anyway, I think this is more than anecdotal, that we did a senior project a little bit north of here, 55 and older. Did it in a couple of phases. And it was very interesting. Independent living, it's not hard of hearing or any of that, just independent living, 55 and older, and you could have 20% less than 55. If you go there, the average age is about 75 years old. You could probably study that, but our little, I think it's more than anecdotal, that we're not going to have 64 or 55-year-olds going to work every day in a community like this. I think that's the reality, and that's what I want to say.
I'm all set.
Any other comments from the public?
I'm Anya Haneke, and I moved into 14 Red Cedar Lane in December. So I'm a new resident, and I moved in because it was. Oh, I did swear in. Okay. Yeah. And I moved in because it was a very kid-friendly community. So that's been really important to me, and it's a very quiet road. I'm all for changing the Yankee Doodle dump to something nice. But my main concern, is that road being a high traffic area. And just this morning I took my daughter and son out to the bus, and my daughter was walking her dog and she was walking in the middle of the road, and I had to keep saying just stay on the side. So the thought of there being a bunch of cars going back and forth, that an 8-year-old doesn't know enough to to judge whether it's dangerous or not, that's concerning. So if there was something like a sidewalk built in, that would be huge, just to at least delineate what kids are supposed to do and how they're supposed to act. So that would be my main concern for something like that. Anybody else?
Yes.
Sworn in. My name is Catherine, and I'm also a resident. And I appreciate Mr. Shank's observation that he wants to be a good neighbor, and we believe that. I would request that the board look at the plans and see how close some of the homes are. And so when the reference to the parking's all out of sight, out of mind, that's not the case for us living there. It will drastically change the experience of some of those homes. So to the extent that it is in your power to come up with a plan that doesn't do that, we would really appreciate that, and we would welcome your presence.
Any other comments? Comments, questions from the board?
Well, since we're clearly going to have, as for the reasons Ravi articulated earlier, a second hearing on this, I hope that at the second hearing, that with the benefit of conversation between the applicants and the respective neighbors, that there will be developments that help the board understand what can be done to address concerns, and if there are concerns that can't be addressed, that we have an understanding of why that is so. So that's not directed at any party or person, but if we're going to have a second hearing on this, I think it's in everyone's interest to use the time between now and that hearing wisely, so that we can resolve what we can resolve, and with respect to anything that we can't, the board has a clear understanding of what the issue is and why we ended up there.
Agreed. How many residents are actually back there?
There's 17 homes. There's 12 in our homeowners association, and then there's 5 in a cul-de-sac behind us.
Okay. But they all have access to that same road?
Yes, everybody uses that road.
commercial property across the street that also has access.
Yep, yep. I haven't been back there in a while, that's why.
Any questions, comments?
Make a motion to continue without closing the record to the, what was the meeting date you suggested, Robert?
July 17th.
To the July 17th DRB meeting.
All in favor?
Aye.
So approved.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
See what's going on up there now? Can you hear that? Maybe it's like 2 inches of rain.
Is that the rain? Oh, boy.
2 and 2.5.
How much, Rick? We're supposed to get 2 inches of rain?
Between 2 and 2.5 tonight. It's supposed to be torrential.
God.
Tonight?
The lake's still coming up.
I'll auction off my umbrella.
I'm betting my dock gets in on the 4th of July.
Good to see you again.
Okay.
Okay, final agenda item, application BLA 19-01, CU 19-07, and SP 1905, application by Elaine, Alan Yokel, UCal, on behalf of RNY Northside LLC for a boundary line adjustment between 2 adjacent parcels, as well as conditional use and site plan review for developing a warehouse use. Property at 0 Northside Drive is located in the commercial, commerce, and industry district and storm overlay district. Ravi.
So, procedurally to note, the board has to review and act upon the boundary line adjustment before they can review the conditional use and site plan. Because without the boundary line adjustment, the conditional use and site plan would be moot. So staff advises that before any actions is taken on the conditional use and site plan, the boundary line adjustment application is determined. That has been summarized on page 2 and also 3. With the application in general, staff has noted that the board should consider a condition of approval that would require the applicant to provide a performance bond or other form of security for the proposed landscaping. With also, and lastly, with the lighting, the applicant has proposed 21 light fixtures of 2,516 lumens. And the applicant has not provided a photometric plan yet. With this in mind, staff suggests that the proposed lighting that the applicant would like should not or cannot exceed 5 lumens between 6 a.m. and 11 p.m. And between 11 p.m. and 6 a.m., the proposed lighting cannot exceed 0.5 lumens. This recommendation is not regulatory in any way, shape, or form. This is not included under Section 1975, but this is suggested under the IESNA lighting standards, as well as Dark Sky Association lighting standards for parking lot lighting. These standards have been outlined in one of the handouts in your packet as well. Lastly, to note, staff has received comments from the fire department for this project. They were in that packet that I provided to you, as well as sent to you prior to this meeting. So the board can address some of the comments, or the comments that are listed in by the fire department in their review. At this point, staff will defer to the applicant.
Hello. Where would you like me to
In front of the microphone.
Hi, I'm Alan Ukel, I'm the applicant.
Hold on. You gotta.
Oh, I gotta speak to the mic first.
We have a big TV audience now.
So what would you like me to do? Stand here? Okay, great.
Do you swear that the evidence you give and the cause under consideration shall be the whole truth and nothing but the truth under the pains and penalties of perjury?
I do.
Okay. You're on.
Well, I think Ravi did a good job of explaining it. We own both properties, one of them existing building on Lot 6 that is being used currently as a automobile body shop as well as storage. Lot 7, we try to, I think it's designated predominantly as an office complex, that area. We found the need for offices is in the market non-existent effectively, especially outside of the downtown. So I think in the ideal world, my plans for this would have been some form of residential, but even though we have residential on east and west, again, it's a non-starter because it's not even a conditional use. So we are kept it vacant for a couple of years. Previous to this, we had plans approved for a 40,000 square foot warehouse. Again, we couldn't find anybody interested to build it. So I think ultimately we think the best use for this would be, given the constraint, is a self-storage, and particularly a climate control one as a main primary building with some accessory buildings. We've met, I believe, all the setbacks and in terms of coverage of the lots. In order to accommodate this, we're sort of stealing a little bit from Peter and giving it to the other lot to make this financially viable. It's about 40,000 square feet, roughly the area of it, and of the buildings, similar to what we had before. And the chances are, and we haven't quite figured this out, if depend on the demand, if we'll build it all in one go or will be phased over a couple of years. So that's something to be determined. We have gotten some preliminary pricing from manufacturers who make these, and overall I think the project is financially viable if the demand for it is there. And I know we have quite a few self-storage units around. And in our research, we found the climate control is very hard to come by. The other stuff, not so much. But it seemed to me a purely climate control storage doesn't add the pro forma, doesn't make it work. You need both. The accessories are key to it because the cost of the climate control is too high for dollars per square foot you get. So I think that's about it. And it's a lovely site. It's flattish. It's got lots of vegetation that we want to keep towards the residential side of it and only clear the areas we need. And there are no major trees. It's just basically shrubs and vegetation of 4 or 5 feet high that it's grown throughout. So I think that's about all I can offer at this time. Oh, a couple of other things, if I may. I do understand we're taking a bit of a liberty not having all the stormwater thing. We did that for the previous scheme. So for this one, we just wanted to see if we can, if this is a go both in terms of financial and so on. And since it involved a couple of changes in the boundary and conditional use, we spoke, Ravi and I, we decided we might as well do it now and make it conditional. We're going to engage the engineers the moment this hearing is over to get on with the stormwater work. And finally, a couple of days ago, received the fire marshal's or chief fire comments, and we would like, I've tried to reach to the chief to speak to him about it, but there are a couple of requirements he has that sort of go beyond the code, and I just need some clarification on it, i.e., the main building should be, or I call the main building, the climate control one should have a sprinkler system in it. It's less than 12,000 square feet, and I don't know the reasons why the fire marshal wants it. And also, he requests a couple of hydrants. There's a hydrant right now on the just the cul-de-sac on the other side, one further down, and there's no other of these other properties had another one. I can understand having one further back, but I don't understand having another one just across the street from the first hydrant. But these are a couple of issues that we would like to engage and make sure we're on the same page. That's it.
I think NFPA has a maximum hose carry length of 450 or 600 feet, I forget which. It might be NFPA that he's citing,
He's got
NFPA 1, on the hydrant, as far as.
On the hydrant, okay.
The distance. From another application, I recall there's a
Yeah.
a maximum hose carry distance that they like to have, so.
Right.
I believe it's an NFPA 1.
Right, I appreciate that, actually. There's one hydrant here right now.
Mm-hmm.
There's another one down there. I can see another one somewhere in there.
Yes.
But I don't.
So where is he proposing that?
I know he's asked for 2 hydrants.
Okay.
And I don't understand where the second one, what's the purpose of that in terms of coverage?
Oh, okay.
It's,
I didn't realize he was asking.
yeah, he's asking for 2. I don't mind, I can understand if he says there should be another one somewhere up there.
Mhm.
But I think he's asking for 2, so I'm not sure. And also with NFPA 101, basically you go through it and it's 12,000 square feet. Actually, the climate control area, just to be clarified in case there is a confusion here, this is a rather interesting main building because the center area here is the climate control. These are accessed from the outside. So even though the whole building is 11,000 square feet, the climate control area is substantially smaller. It's almost like 6,000 square feet. So,
And the fire chief was aware of that when you spoke with him?
I don't know, I tried to speak to him. I just, actually, I didn't realize it's gonna be an issue till I got or it's not an issue, but he will require that till, I got the letter a couple of days ago. I've reached out, but we haven't connected. So I'm hoping between now and until we get this thing done, we will speak.
Quick question, Riley, that will be handled by the state labor and industry.
Yes.
Under
Correct.
code anyway, so it's not really.
Well,
Right, well.
it works
I mean,
in
we can
mysterious
require
ways.
it if we want to, but it's not.
No, I just didn't know what the board's situation is on that. I'm fine to work, I mean, our position is we're gonna comply with all the applicable codes.
Right.
But I'm also aware from the other projects, when a fire chief has a request, usually that is beyond the code, it's considered very strongly. So our point is to speak and make sure he's happy and we're happy.
Okay.
Yes.
So the process issue that is a little confusing to me is that if I look at the draft approval language, which the staff submitted, there is nothing in it that addresses the fire chief's concern. Is that because it will be addressed through other processes anyway, and we don't need to address it, or does that imply that we are taking no view on that?
It is because staff received the comments from the fire chief on Monday. So it was not able, we could not include it in your packets on Thursday.
So is the best way to manage that to add approval language to the effect that there has to be a resolution with respect to the fire chief issue? That seems a little weird to me, because my prior understanding from our last go-through about fire issues is that the board makes the call on anything that exceeds the code. So I don't want to unnecessarily stir that pot again.
Well, it sounds to me like it's important that the fire chief and the applicant have a conversation, and the fire chief understands, the fact that only 6,000 square feet of this is basically an enclosed, temperature-controlled building first.
So is the best way process-wise to get there is to continue it, as opposed to grant an approval, which locks us in one way or the other?
I'm trying to think of some language to craft as a condition that we could move this along.
Because it seems to me those are the two alternatives. We either come up with language that everybody's comfortable with, not yet knowing what the resolution is, or we continue it and knowing the resolution, we then approve or don't approve.
The thing that I wrestle with is, and I don't know, I'd have to see, is what you're proposing actually, does it actually meet the code or not? And then, how do we weigh, what the chief, is asking for? You know, because he is not the authority having jurisdiction for this. He can present his request.
You may disagree with you.
And I would grab the book and I would show him. I mean, the state, in Shelburne, it's the state of Vermont that has the jurisdiction. Depends on what town you're in. If you're in Burlington, South Burlington, whatever, the fire chief has that jurisdiction, but in Shelburne, not. He's got a few little things he can do, but not much. So I think this is a desire from him. That would be my opinion. And so I probably, we always like to be very cognizant of what our, fire chief, police department, whatever, are looking for. I think it would be beneficial for you to maybe sit down with him and
We're
have that
definitely
discussion.
going to do that. Actually, this is not even a question for the zoning. It's a labor and industry thing. It's just what has happened is before, I'm an architect, by the way, as well as a developer. So before we do anything, we go through the code analysis ourselves. So we're aware what the code says. And what the fire chief has asked is slightly in contrast. So to me, I found the best thing to do is to have a nice, friendly dialogue and try to understand what is the reason and explain.
Sure.
And if that doesn't work, then, you go through the labor and industry, and then the state inspector decides, they decide yes or no. And if they do decide that we've got to put sprinkler system, we are going to put sprinkler
Then you
system.
gotta do it, yep.
So that's how it works. So for me, it's not really a condition we're not going to abide one way or another. I'm just addressing, having received the report from the chief a couple of days ago, or a day ago from Bravi, I noticed a couple of things in there that doesn't make much sense, and I think I'd like to have that discussion. Whatever the code says, that's what we're going to do.
I think that would be good to have that discussion, and maybe we continue until you've had that discussion and bring it back to us, or?
I would ask respectfully if it's possible, as I said, this is not really a zoning issue. This is to me, a labor and industry. And as long as we are going to comply with a code, building code, as well as we're going to comply with the stormwater code, then that's a condition I'm very happy to do so, to live
And
with.
that kind of goes without being said. You abide by the code.
Well, Mark, what would you think of language that simply said, subject to compliance with all applicable codes, rules, and regulations?
I'm fine with that. I think
Yep.
that's
Yeah.
really.
We're not trying to not to go with a code. I'm just trying to get a clarification.
Because that doesn't prevent you from having that discussion.
For all practical purposes, he may know a little thing somewhere in there that says it, and, no arguments. I just need to understand it, so.
To add to this, staff would recommend some sort of condition that would state that any changes to access and circulation due to revisions in response to the fire department would require DRB review and approval. Because that is the main goal with site plan approval, is that you are reviewing access and circulation, and that with the comments listed here, I see probably 1 out of the 6 that deal with access and circulation, and the others are dealing with fire safety and labor and industry codes, NOx boxes, location of hydrants, and the like. So
that language would be fine with me, Robbie.
I think the chief can, I think NFPA 1 gives him the authority to talk about hydrants and distances and stuff like that. Not so much whether that's sprinkled or not. But anyways, applicable
I agree
codes or
with you.
whatever.
There's some, it depends on who you're dealing with.
It's, I've done a few buildings. I have to tell you, at the end of the day, we ended up doing what the chief has asked for. It's,
It's good relationship.
You can't win it.
Yeah.
Let's put it to you this way. And it's not our intention to.
You understand.
I think I think if he fully understood that building was only 6,000 feet enclosed, that he may
Non-occupied.
have it. And this is, what type of construction is it?
Steel.
Yeah, single story, yeah, I think that,
And what's the difference from the fire hydrant to the back of those back two buildings where the number lot 7 is?
Sorry again?
From the fire hydrant up here in the front, on the bottom right?
Here, yes?
Yeah, the distance from there to like where it says lot number 7 to the back of those two buildings?
I'd say that's a good question. I haven't quite measured it, but hold on one of these it might give the distance of that line. And that would be a good reference point.
oh, there is the varying distance on that line?
I don't see anything.
I have the existing plans here, maybe. The previous stuff we did.
I mean, just using the crude scale method here.
Yeah, actually here I found it.
Okay, the graph.
Yeah, I got it. So this line, from here
Yep.
to way up to this corner,
Yep.
this guy here, that is 568 feet, just to give you a scale. So from here to back there, my guess is, I don't know, anything from 475 to 500, I don't know, to the furthest corner.
That might fall into your numbers that you were talking
Yeah.
about earlier.
And I think some of the, I know in other projects I've dealt with, there's been a lot of discussion about trying to a larger facility, minimize having to have hose crossing the roadway,
Yeah.
especially on a dead-end road.
In fact, you only got 150 feet between those buildings and, 4 or 5 residences?
Yep.
You know, like you said, driving that.
You're gonna send water to the building anyways along?
Well, it's really interesting. We've got plenty of water because when we did, the reason we started this whole thing was I started this tire storage thing, and we were storing tires, and for that we needed a special sprinkler system.
Yeah.
And even though the building on lot 6 had very good sprinkler system, we had to put a huge amount of water to come and takes care of the rubber burning and all that. So because of that, we upgraded a system that can handle lot 7 in case the tire storage business went well and we had to build another building. Well, good or bad, it didn't go well, so we didn't have to build another building. So I know we have plenty of water, but as far as getting water in there, we're toying with the idea, do we get a small bathroom in there, or do we get a sink in there, or I think we get some kind of a water line in there.
So coming back to the fire department comments, based on your inclination, seems like 2 items of this needs to be resolved by you in terms of access and circulation. One would be that the road widths must maintain 20 feet throughout the facility, which is item number 2 on the letter. And also item number 4, which is the median at the entrance, whether that should be removed, stamped, painted pavement, brick at the same level. Those are the 2 items that should be resolved on your end, because that would deal with access and circulation. No, this was in the, it's in the fire department letter.
It's in Jerry's comments.
Yes.
So we need to add those.
So they say to
What's
remove
the purpose of the median?
Well,
In any
the
case?
only reason for median was nicety of one gate going up when you go in and the other one going up when you come out. But we'll have most probably just one gate working from both sides. And it's actually, most probably we'll get value engineered to one. So as far as the median is concerned, if we do anything there, it's going to be mainly cosmetic and not raised.
Okay.
So I don't have a problem with the condition. And number 2, the drives, if I'm not mistaken, most of them are either 22 or 24 feet wide, so okay with that too.
All right.
Okay.
So if we added those 2 conditions, 7 and 8, or 7, list them both.
Yep.
Can I ask a question, please?
Yes.
So I'm more immediately, my property butts.
Need to swear you in, sir.
Yes, yes. You want to, there anybody else? I would be asking some questions. I said also.
Okay. Do you swear that the evidence you give in the cause under consideration shall be the whole truth and nothing but the truth under the pains and penalties of perjury?
I do. So my property and Perry's abuts your project, lot 10. So I noticed there was a 150-foot setback. Okay. My concern is, I've been here longer than any of the projects have been in that development. I mean, that's not my development, but it does affect us. The lighting issue, is that a 24/7 operation?
No.
Okay, so it's limited to,
It's motion detector,
Well-
and the operation is got a time from, we haven't quite finalized the time, but I'm guessing it's from most probably 7 o'clock till 8 o'clock at night.
so after 8 o'clock at night, there won't be any activity coming in?
No.
And how are these storage units monitored for what people put in them, what they're storing in them?
What, in terms of security?
In terms of materials?
Materials.
As to what is being stored in these units. Who checks that?
I think they're free to store what they like.
Right, which is a neighborhood on Hedgerow with a lot of children. We only got the letters because we abut that property, but there's more people on Hedgerow Drive that face that wooded lot back there. And if it's going to be, my concern is screening, number one. There's a lot of issues with screening that has to be maintained, fencing, and the lights are out after 8 o'clock? There's nobody can access their unit after 8 o'clock?
If nobody accesses their unit at 6 o'clock, there are no lights on.
Well, they can access their unit?
Yes, to a certain period.
24/7?
Not 24/7, no.
So they won't be able to get in after?
Not
certain hours?
after certain hours, right?
Okay, their code or whatever they use will not work?
Correct.
It'll be fenced in?
What do you mean fenced in?
Well, a lot of these units I see have a fence around. So if somebody's driving into the far buildings back there.
Yes.
Right, which is 150 feet from our property.
Yes.
What's to prevent somebody from going even further, investigating our I mean, usually there's a fence where people can't get any further than the units.
I'm trying to understand it, but for example, Lot 6 has no fence and has no time limit when you can go, nor the other lots, so I don't understand.
Well,
You
Lot
can't
6
prevent somebody walking across a lot, is that your question?
No,
How somebody?
what I'm saying is your business, your tire business and the auto shop there, they have certain hours. Nobody's in there, they're done for the day at 5, 6, 7 o'clock.
Well, they can access it any time. It's an office.
Yeah, they can.
Yeah.
But when you're talking about a business, right? But here you're talking about people that you don't know I mean, you have no control on these people that are storing.
Well, we know who they
items.
are.
You know who they are?
Yes.
Yeah, yeah.
So we know who they are. They're our customers, and there's going to be security cameras, and which they work in the dark. And if there is a motion, the light will come on, and then when the motion stops after 5 minutes, depending on the timing, how you time it, the lights will go off again.
Right.
But in terms of how do you prevent somebody from Lot 8 walking there or from the other adjoining lot? I mean, it's all open.
Yeah, I understand that. But those other lots are like a specific time for employees of that business. This is some, your clients, your customers, but we don't know what they're storing in there, is my concern. That's concern. Beyond that, it's the screening from your boundary to our property line.
Right.
And I think that should be maintained.
Oh, it is going to be
not
maintained.
cut.
Right. The 150.
Well, that 150 buffer between our properties
Right.
should be.
Right. There's a 150 buffer to the building, to the property line as
Yes,
shown.
yes.
Then there is a strip of 20 feet there, which is the road, the drive. And then we don't intend to cut beyond that. And you see some of those round circles there. Those are our proposal, if there is a gap somewhere in there, to put new vegetation in there to screen it. So those trees, those round circles you see along the...
Yeah, now what are those gonna be?
most probably of pine nature. I would say these guys are on there to provide the year-round screening.
Yeah.
And they're fastest growing.
And you'll avoid cutting unnecessarily, because it is.
We have no, it's dense, we have no intent of going there.
It's a growing
No.
out there.
Absolutely no intent. It's just, we're gonna go to the limit of what we need and that's it.
Yeah.
And if there is some odd bits, like, I don't know, I mean, we've drawn these lines here, like you can see the tree line, the existing shrub. So if there is an opening in there, we're gonna put vegetation there to block it.
Mm-hmm.
The other thing to keep in mind, the height of the buildings from there that is next to you is most probably about 12 feet in height.
Okay.
They're pretty low.
Right.
And the lighting that goes on the building only shines down, and that's installed at most probably 6 feet high. So it's as low as you're gonna get in terms of impact of any building, that's my opinion.
Right.
Because you could potentially put a 3-story office building there, and
Is that zone for a 3-story? What is your, what's there now? Your.
well, I say 3-story, there's a height of 34 to, I don't know what the height.
35 feet.
35 feet.
35 feet. Right, 35 feet is what it. Anyway, those were my concerns. If they're addressed, I guess you're in all your rights to proceed.
No, we intend to, make sure you are as safeguarded as we can by keeping the existing.
Yeah.
That's the intent.
Yeah, I mean, there's little I can do about that. I just want to make sure that that is the case.
The other thing, just to point out, by the way, it's most probably a very limited impact business. People do show up, they usually put stuff in and they go away. They don't come back every day like going to work.
Right.
So hopefully, in terms of traffic and so on, it's almost minimal.
Right. You know, but there is more traffic back there. For me, as a homeowner,
Yeah,
when
I
I've lived
understand.
there for a long time without
I
anything like that, the idea that, yes, there's stuff being stored, chemicals, drugs, I don't know what's stored in there. So people are coming in and out. You have to admit, it could be anything. It's a concern for me.
I agree with it, could be anything. I hope it's none of those things, but.
But you don't know. You have no idea.
No, as far as I know, there could be a couple of drug guys selling drugs around the corner too. I don't know.
There could be. But this affects me more.
Yeah.
That's my concern. Perry, do you have anything?
I'm Perry Reinhardt again. I've only been in the neighborhood for 25 years as opposed to Maury's been here around 40 years, so 35, yeah. Right now, that field, when I first moved in, it used to be mowed quite a bit, but over the last 20 years or so, they stopped mowing. So actually, it's grown up quite a bit. There are a number of trees in there. The height of the shrubs is actually well over my head now. So it is developed. What I'm concerned of, and I don't know, Ravi, are you able to zoom back on that plan at all? I don't know. My issues more have to do with water. It's 20 years ago now, they redeveloped Hullcrest Park because of water issues to meet with the state requirements on water being entering the Champlain Basin being more treated. And that caused, I know the neighbors nearest the park, some issues with water around their foundations, and both Maury and I have had issues with the water table since that time, where both of us have had to put in new footage drains around our foundation to address the integrity of our foundations. And I know that the area to the east and the north there was zoned as wetland, and I don't know if after the park was put in, whether they did any follow-up environmental impacts on that area to see if the size or nature of that wetland had changed once they did that. We just know that we've had more water issues since the park went in, so I don't know if that's changed, and I don't know how that wetland status affects lot number 7. My concern in looking at this is we're developing an area that is going to be paved, a large area that's going to be paved, and will not allow absorption of the water into the ground in that area. And I don't know if our water table will be further destabilized or affected by this new building. So I don't, you know, and I say I would have to defer to the town to see if they've done any follow-up studies since that park was rebuilt to treat the stormwater drainage going through there, as to whether that wetland changed in nature and size, or the water table was affected in that way. So my concerns, although I echo Maury's concerns, certainly on basic things like noise and lighting and things like that. But I will agree with you, sir, that of all the businesses that go in there, this is rather low impact. I mean, there won't be a lot of traffic, there won't be a lot of people at all times. So I was under no illusions when I bought this property that it would forever be undeveloped like that in this sense. But given our problems with water, I just would have some concerns about how water runoff and how water distribution will be affected by this going in there.
Yeah, I think it's a very good concern. What tends to happen is, it's actually, I can show you the previous stuff so you can get a sense of what's to come. This is what was approved before, by the way, just to give you a sense of it. This is the existing warehouse.
Is that the Queen City warehouse, or is that the?
No, this is the one where Store Your Tires is at.
Okay.
So this is the existing building?
Yeah.
So this was going to be expanded to this size,
Yeah.
almost double, and then this was the new structure, big one coming there.
Yeah.
So this was approved. The only reason we did not build this is we could not find a tenant who wanted 40,000 square feet before we built it. There was a refrigeration plant that was going to come there, but it didn't happen. So I'm not aware of any wetlands that we know of.
The park is kind of over here.
Right.
And I know this kind of corner was considered wet, or it was.
Right.
there was some
I'm
issues.
not
And
aware
there's-
of that.
There's a pond over here, and there's a stream that comes down as well. So there's a lot of water that comes through here.
Right.
And is it possible,
So-
yeah, the pond's over here.
Yeah, so part of the design that
Yeah.
we go through is going to be a civil engineering group, like these guys, who are going to do all sorts of stormwater and water mitigation and all that.
Okay.
So that's going to happen. So in, like, for example, here on the previous one, there was a retainage basin here.
Yeah.
So all of that, I think, is going to be done. So if any are issues, it will be improved rather than going the other way around.
Okay.
So, but we can't get approval without going through all the code requirements for the stormwater and surface water and all that. So that's part of
I
it.
think this will be subject to the state, which is actually the federal rules that are administered by the
They're
state.
very,
So
tight.
Yeah.
we have very strict stormwater regulations.
And this is
in
a
this case,
question I
so-
probably should just go down to the town and ask if there were any, after they did this incredible filtration job at the park, and they raised the park about 20 feet,
Right.
and there was quite a bit of work done there, how it impacted the overall water drainage in the area. I don't know if they did any follow-up studies on that, which I'd be curious
I'm
about
sure
if they did.
somebody did the hypothetical hydrology for that, and I'm
Yeah.
sure they could
Yeah,
take
okay.
a look at it.
That's good to know.
It sounds like there were some unintended consequences when that was built.
As there usually are, yeah. Okay, thank you.
I do hear your concerns, and I think as far as the buffer is concerned, really the intention is to only clear as much as we need to get the work and leave the rest as it is. And if we find some pockets here and there that either accidentally being created or there was not enough vegetation, I think we've allowed for like about, I don't know how many, it's like 15 trees to be put in there to block those off. And as far as the surface water, storm water and so on, I wish I could just deal with you and not the state. I think you'd be easily more easily satisfied than the state would.
You're probably right.
Yeah.
Can you just ask how many units you're actually going to have in there?
I'm sorry?
How many actual units?
You know, I did those numbers. It just depends how you look at it. I think we are close to about 280 when you count all of them. I should know that number. There was like 3, 4 performers, and every time we had to add one more and reduce some, and it's a physical calculation, but number of units I find is a little bit of a hard measure, because you can take a 5 by 10 or you can take a 10 by 20 and you can play the numbers, but it's the same area basically.
And you see a market in this business?
You know, I thought there was a market in tire storage, and guess what? It didn't quite pan out. So.
Because there's a unit, there is
there's quite a few.
And further down south on Route 7.
Yes, there are.
Right.
I know for a fact when it comes to the climate control, it's really hard to find one. That's a real scarcity, and I wish I could build them all climate controlled, but the
And
problem.
who's going to use the climate control for what?
It's like I have one that I use, even though I have a house. It's for anything that, you know, is susceptible to damp or cold, and like usually people put furniture away, they put artwork, furniture, stuff like that, you know, somewhere that they have more value for it. Versus the other stuff.
If I could interrupt, I don't know how much of the discussion is actually applicable now to the site plan review
I don't know.
and whatever, so.
Yeah,
We've actually got
you guys got
more
places to go.
testimony, be glad to hear it, otherwise, I'd welcome any kind of motion from the board.
So I hope they do come, because otherwise, that,
Yes. Mark?
All right, so, first I would make a motion to finalize the record and close the hearing. For this application, we're doing the boundary line adjustment first, we doing this separately, or we
So,
doing this uniformly?
You
or-
can close the hearing for all 3 items at once, and
Okay.
then
We need
you would
to-
have to indicate, you'd have to act upon the boundary line adjustment
Boundary line
first
adjustment, 'cause
before,
You can't have one without the other.
yes.
So for application BLA 19-01 and CU 19-07 and SP 19-05, I again move that we finalize the record and close this hearing. I would also make a motion to indicate approval for the proposed boundary line adjustment, which is BLA 19-01, to make the adjustment as depicted on the plans. There is one condition that prior to issuing a zoning permit, the Mylar must be recorded within 180 days of the approval, and this is pursuant to subdivision regulation, section 1030.
Second.
Okay, we'll vote on that first.
All in favor?
Aye. Okay. And I would secondly make a motion to indicate approval of the proposed conditional use and site plan, directing staff to indicate approval of those. With the conditions as written in the staff report, and I believe we had an amendment. Okay,
Any changes to access and circulation in response to the fire department's comments would require the ERB approval.
that's one of them, and I think the other was to be that we were going to condition that the building is built to meet all applicable.
I have that one too, subject to compliance with all applicable rules and regulations.
I think that's the second, so those are the two.
Correct, so that puts us up to 7.
Another one is to, on, the staff recommends with, regarding the median, that no median would be depicted on any plans with any zoning permit application, to make sure that what you are approving reconciles with what the fire department is.
Yeah, I would like to make a recommendation that the median is constructed in a way that is acceptable to the fire department. Is that
Fair enough.
for you?
That works for me.
Because that gives you some options. You can
Yeah.
have you can do a drive-over median. There's a lot of different options there. So,
as I said, maybe it's one of those items we're going to be, when the cost comes in. And we'll make the fire chief happy too.
that's the contractors. All right.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
Good luck. And, Mr. Levy, I will offer some anecdotal testimony back to you that I live right behind the the storage units that are on Shelburne Road now, and they're great neighbors.
Okay.
And you're gonna be a lot further away. The only thing I hear is once every 2 weeks, some guy comes and starts a car he has stored. And it's fine, he starts it up, and he leaves, that's it. So, the,
I'm sorry, that's my jet engine.
contrary to other things that could have been built there, it was a very welcome, build-up.
Okay, any other business?
I make a motion to adjourn.
Second. All in favor, aye.
Aye.
Aye.